an Italian-American physicist, engineer, inventor, entrepreneur, who grew up in North Italy, a father and a scholar, who designed the first commercial microprocessor, the Intel 4004. With his recent book, a memoir, Silicon, full of striking contents, a book that I would suggest strongly for you to read. Yes, we are together with Mr. Federico Faggin. Welcome, Mr. Faggin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We can easily say that you are in almost all of these technological products we are using, computers, iPhones. We can see your fingerprints everywhere. And I am, as a science researcher, an international lawyer who writes about neuroscience, quantum physics, and mythology and Sufism at the same time, am struck with your mind and wisdom and your theory of reality that we will be talking about in this podcast. So I would like to share only a few points before we begin our podcast about what we will talk in this podcast. The contents we will be talking about are why Mr. Faggin thinks computers can never be conscious the way human is, meaning consciousness and computers issues. And two, his understanding about this world being a virtual reality field. What is this about? We had also an interview with Joshua Bach very recently, and we're going to have an interview with Bernardo Kastrup very soon. I used to think that as a neuroscience-based person, I used to think that about consciousness, you have to know quantum physics to understand consciousness. But these days I see very, very strongly that computer science is also a very fundamental element of understanding consciousness. So can you tell us about the issue of consciousness and computers, and these days about AI and how actually consciousness is different than a computer?
All right. It's a long conversation because there are many points here. Well, let me just say, first of all, what is consciousness, at least in my way of looking at consciousness. Consciousness is our capacity to have an experience that is based on sensations and feelings. We know because we feel. We don't know because we have electrical signals in the brain or because we somehow perceive electrical signals like a computer does. We actually know through sensations and feeling, what philosophers call qualia. And qualia are, in my way of thinking, in my model, are the bringers of meaning. So qualia is what gives meaning to our experience, because we can experience something and it doesn't mean much. We still have an experience, but there are some experiences that brings tremendous meaning. They mean a lot to us. Even if we cannot define what meaning is, we know what meaning is. Of course, we can define energy in operational terms also, but we do not know what energy is. Physicists don't know what energy is. They can only compute differences in energy. But if you ask them, but tell me, what is energy? They cannot tell you, because most of the terms used in physics are operational terms. They refer to the fact that you can do measurements and you can find relationships between quantities that can be measured. But love, hate, or pleasure cannot be measured in the same way that you can measure position, momentum of a particle or of a physical body. So consciousness is this incredible property that we have that baffles science, because the view of science today typically is that consciousness emerges from the brain, and the brain is considered like a computer, like an information processing system that does not process information exactly like a computer, but by and large, it is like a computer, you're told. Well, I don't think so at all. Clearly, the information that the brain processes is fundamental in order to have an experience. But the experience goes beyond the information computed by the brain. It is something that, so the information computed by the brain is a correlate of an experience, as opposed to be the cause of an experience, as we are told. And the reason for this is very clear, because we can have experiences where, for example, the brain is dead, or at least if it's not dead, it's not functioning, like near-death experiences, for example. I don't know if your readers are familiar with that, so I will not explain them, but near-death experiences, a person has the heart typically not functioning, the brain not functioning, and yet they have incredible experiences. In fact, they are experiences which do not require the body functioning to have this experience. So how can you explain those experiences? And I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of people that have had such experiences. If the consciousness, in other words, the capacity to have an experience, depends on a brain that presumably works, because if the brain doesn't work, what do you expect from a non-working computer? Nothing. So here we are. I've only gone so far. So, tell me what next you want, because as I said, it's a long long explanation. You asked me many questions in one.
Yes, and I will go into detail, of course, because you have amazing. I think, Mr. Faggin, not because I'm talking to you, but I think you have. Until now, you have brought the best theory of reality, of the fabric of reality and consciousness. As of today, I haven't heard anything that is like so understandable, and that is like, containing all the elements that we can talk about consciousness and the fabric of reality, and the idea that we are living in a virtual reality, kind of reality. So I think it's an amazing theory, and I'm hoping that's going to be spread to anyone. And that is why I strongly suggest everyone reads your books, because I have to go through, because I'm not a computer scientist. Yes, I am, I'm good in neuroscience and quantum physics, but because of computer science, my sister is a computer scientist, by the way, and the philosopher, but I had to go through it, and I was struck by it as a Sufi also, because I have after one of my retreats, I have experienced certain things, and this is very important because we work on dream science as the neuroscience team. We work on dreams, and all the things that you have explained are so familiar to what we think about reality and how we perceive consciousness. So that is why I'm going to go into detail. But before that, we believe that the life is a school. Life is a school, which was one of your points that made us cry in a way, because we say that this one that you also mentioned is like a teacher, one who is trying to who wants to observe himself through himself, by himself. So, and that is why I wanted to say something. When you look at the lives of scientists and philosophers and Sufi masters and all these people like you, like yourself, because you are a mixture of them. So when we look at their lives, we see that the universe is like a school, and there was something that was pushing them to become who they were, just like a seed. You know, the seed has its own potential within it, and the universe helps it become what it should turn to. So I would like to first, before beginning this, because Enrico Fermi, when you look why he was into physics, it's because he lost his brother. And then physics was the only thing, science was the only thing that was keeping him like alive. And I always give the example of Elvis Presley, who asked for a bike, but life gave him a guitar, and that's how he became the legend.
Yes.
So how, I know because I'm reading your book, but could you please share with our viewers and our followers how when you were living in this materialist paradigm and you had everything, but you found out that you were not happy or maybe satisfied within your heart. And how was that awakening? So what pushed you to understand this just like that?
Well, yeah. So I grew up Catholic, like most Italians, especially 80 years ago. I will turn 80 this year. So 80 years ago, when I was born during World War II, and soon after, a year and a half after, my parents moved away from moving the countryside because it was safer after the invasion of the Allied forces in Sicily. And so the Allied forces were moving north from Sicily, sweeping away the Germans. And so I live in the countryside, and you know, basically a place where the information revolution that was just beginning here and not even being heard, and the industrial revolution had not even arrived. So you know, my first 6 years of life were in an environment speaking a dialect that was like, you know, 200 years ago. And then I went back to Vicenza, my hometown where I was born, and I did the rest of my studies, and then I went to work after graduating from a technical high school. I designed a small computer and built it at Olivetti, and so I had a major experience that allowed me to understand what I wanted to do when I was growing up, which was to understand quantum physics, understand the semiconductors, because I saw that the future was in that technology. In those days, the transistors we are beginning to use in making computers. I'm talking about 1960, 1961. And so I went back to study physics at university. And after graduating, I worked in the semiconductor industry in Italy. And then I moved to Silicon Valley in '68, where I invented a new way to make an MOS integrated circuits, a technology that eventually took over, became the only technology used for all the integrated circuits. And I also designed the first microcomputer and all the early ones of Intel. So my activity was really technological, while I grew up in the Catholic ethics and religion and worldview. Slowly I abandoned that because it just didn't make sense to me. You know, it was too dogmatic, and the explanation of physics were much more cogent. They made more sense to me. And so little by little, without any rebellion, I moved away from religious thinking and adopted the worldview of physics, of science, because physics is sort of the foundation of science, of many sciences. And I was happy with doing the work. I enjoyed doing the inventing and the development of products and technologies that I did. And but then I decided to become an entrepreneur, because the company where I was working, Intel at that time, was not moving fast enough for me in adopting the microprocessors. And so I started my first company called Zilog, developed the Z80 microprocessor,
Yes.
which was one of the most widely used microprocessors in the world. still in production today, 45 years after it being introduced. And so, I started a career that required me to change from being just a scientist using my intellect, and pretty much only my intellect, beginning to use something else, like my belly. The belly is the area of, is the action center. Of course, it's a metaphorical, it's metaphorical center, not real, right? But the action is the action center, the center of courage, the center of the capacity to do things that may even go against the grain of society because you think is right. And it takes that capacity to act with courage and with heart. But the heart is a third aspect of reality. So in my engineering and scientific work, I use my head, especially the intellectual aspect, the rational portion of the mind, and the intuitive side was thought to be like part of the rationality. But now I think differently. Now I believe that our intuitive side, our creative side, come directly from our consciousness, which is not even in the brain, is somewhere else. So then I developed the belly, because I had to make decisions without knowing what I was deciding. If I decided to make a new product, how do I know that it's going to be competitive? Because I don't know what the competition is doing. How do I know how the market is going to be 3 or 5 years from now? I don't know that. No mathematical formula can tell you that. So you had to make decisions based on lack of knowledge. Where when you make a product, you know your science and you know what to do, or what not to do. So very different reality. And so I achieved pretty much everything that I had in mind to achieve. I married when, just before coming in Silicon Valley, so in '67. And, we had 3 children, beautiful family, everybody happy, everybody healthy. I was pretending to be happy because I had reached everything that the world says that if you do that, you should be happy. But deep down, I was not happy at all. There was a sinking feeling within my heart that I couldn't tell where it was coming from. How can I not be happy? If the world said that I should be happy, I did everything, I checked all the boxes. How can this be? And that was the situation about 35 years ago, where I found myself. Basically, the worldview that I had believed in, there was the new worldview that I moved away from the worldview of religion. That also let me down because it did not satisfy my heart. It did not satisfy my feeling, my capacity to enjoy life. I was pretending to be happy because I was supposed to be happy. So, that's the way that you end up being. And it was in those days, I was working with neural networks very early, 35 years ago. I was one of the pioneers in neural network, trying to make emulators using analog electronics of neural networks. Because in those days, the computers were not fast enough to really do the processing the neural networks can do. Today, you can have a simulator of a neural network that goes, essentially 1 billion times faster than what we did, in the mid '80s. So, we are talking about incredible progress that has been made in the last 35 years. But in those days, the only way to do it was with analog electronics, where you could do with one transistor, you could do a multiply add, and also a storage of an analog value, and so you could actually do a parallel processing with millions of of the order of 1 million or hundreds of thousands of basically multiply add units. So anyway, during that time, I was studying neuroscience, And one day, just out of the blue, I asked myself, but these books on neuroscience, they all talk about electrical signals, biochemical signals. They never mention feelings. They never mention, you know, sensations. They only talk sensations equal electrical signals. I said, but that's not possible. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't measure signals. I don't respond to bits. You know, I have feelings. Where is the feelings coming from? That's the first time in my life that I thought clearly about consciousness, that I had realized that consciousness was different than functioning of the brain or electrical signals, functioning of a computer. So, and it was in this milieu of being interested in trying to figuring out, how can I make a conscious computer? I mean, if science is right, that consciousness is a property of a complex information processing system, then a computer should be conscious. And the more I thought about it, the more impossible that was. How can you translate electrical signals into feelings? That it, you know, there are two completely different categories of qualities of being, of existence. So I didn't know, but as I was working and I was unhappy, I had basically an awakening that changed my life. And that was about 30 years ago, 31 years ago, when I essentially experienced myself as love, but a love so powerful and so unbelievable and so rich that the like of it, I wasn't even close to in any of my experience of the highest love that I had felt before. And it was coming from me as a beam. There was, white scintillating light that was rushing out of me and then exploding into light with this scintillating light everywhere. So now I am this light because it was coming from me and it exploded from me. So I am this. This is not an intellectual recognition. This is an experience. I am that. I was there. And I was also the observer of there. So I was both the observer of my experience, but also the experience, which is, blew my mind. This is, completely different way to conceive reality. All of a sudden, I am the world and the observer of the world. I am a point of view of the world upon itself. Wow. But you see, but this was an experience, just like when you taste the fruit. The taste of the fruit is an experience. If you describe that experience to somebody that hasn't tasted that fruit, he will not understand what you're talking about, because you can only understand by experiencing. You can only understand because you tasted the same fruit. Of course, if you have already tasted a fruit that is similar, you can probably come close. But a fruit that you never tasted before that is completely different than another fruit, you will not be able to describe to a person, and that person duplicate within himself the qualia experience of that fruit until he tastes it. See, experience is living it, living something, is living information, living the information. It's not having the information as bits or as quantum bits. It is, you are inside, the information is you, is another aspect of you. That's where I started thinking that, my God, here information is another side of experience. So we now have a reality that has sort of two faces, an outer face, which is informational, and an inner face, which is experiential, which is knowing, that has meaning. So the information that is outside, that one can see from the outside, is only the outer aspect of a reality whose inner aspect is meaning. So now we have the beginning of conceptualization of how reality might be constructed. So, pretty much I gave you the sense of why, what got me here. And what got me here is this basic experience that changed completely just in probably, I don't know how long it lasted, but of the order of a minute. That's my guess, because there is no time in that experience. But so of the order of a minute, in that minute, my life changed. How can something random in a brain produce such a thing? It's similar to what people that have a near-death experience, that actually have an experience that is out of this world, so to speak, and most of them, their life is changed for the better, in the sense that they find a dimension of being, their spiritual dimension, that before they didn't know existed, that all of a sudden illuminates their life in a completely different way. So that has been the beginning of the study of consciousness, that now was informed by that experience. And through that study, I had many other experiences of consciousness that reveal all kinds of different aspects of consciousness that were, I would say, in some cases as revolutionary as the first one, in other cases not, but in between the complete revolution, like my first experience, and ordinary experience. So between ordinary and extraordinary, extreme extraordinary. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I'm also a musician. I'm called like a hit maker also. And when I play the piano, and sometimes it's like what we call the flow states, the hypofrontality, time is like it stops, and then you become this channel to this consciousness, and the product just comes there and it's there, and you begin to play it, you begin to write the lyrics and everything. It's like a package that is put there, and all you do is actually just being a witness to that product, being a channel to that product. Yeah. And David Bohm, I've also written a lot about him, because I can call myself in many ways a Bohmian. He's an amazing guy who understood that the observer is actually, when we're talking about quantum physics and double slit experiment and everything, when he was reading Krishnamurti, he suddenly understood that, being a witness is being the observer. So actually only the terminology is different in the scientific fields, but with this ancient philosophy or understanding, we are talking about the same thing. But just like you mentioned, it is, for example, as Sufis, we believe that we are living in a dream state, that we are living in a dream. And this body is like a Tesla suit, and this brain is like a virtual reality headset. So the soul, which is, just like you mentioned, is a word that everybody's trying to run away when they are scientists, which we are too. But we know that when we are working on people, for example, I work on multiple personality disorders and everything, and you see that the consciousness, which is using this body, changes. The body changes. So you know that this body, this Tesla suit and this virtual reality headset is actually being used by something else. There's something more to it. But one example I love so much is Cold Blue Look, that I have also put in my book, because I think it's very interesting. He was an armed robber, and he went into armed robbery, and he's an armed robber, and he went into Alcatraz, the prison of Alcatraz. Yeah. So Alcatraz is an isolated place, and the cells in Alcatraz were all isolated and everything. So he went into a fight when he was in the prison. So they threw him into one of the cells of Alcatraz. So he was deprived from any kind of stimuli, of optical stimulations and auditory stimulations, and he wasn't eating anything, and he wasn't like really sleeping. And on the 29th day, he said that he was seeing the sky, because he was in a cell, but he was experiencing a sky that was more real than the sky that we see. Mm-hmm. And then he went out and said, I want to be a good person because I've seen something more to this, what we call reality. So there's something further beyond this. So, you know, it's very interesting because we Sufis, we have retreats. And the first time I ever experienced what you are talking about and the fabric of reality was after a 40-day of retreat, when I saw that we don't have a constant reality, and it's like an on and off reality, and it's like a swimming reality. It's not even like stable like this. So after that, just like you are mentioning, all the way you look at things change, because then you look at this thing that you call reality. I mean, Mr. Faggin, when you look at the root word, the words of and the roots, you actually see these wisdom also. The word reality comes from the root res, which means things. So symbols, representations, there's something beyond it, but you see symbols. And once you get to understand this, then it's intriguing. And because I was very happy, I was very successful, I was very famous, I'm a celebrity, I'm still a celebrity with my books too. I had everything. I went to school in the United States and I was traveling all around and I had everything. But, you know, one day it was when I was in Boston, I was running at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like thinking, am I a robot? What is this? I wake up at 5, I go to sports, and then I go to school, and then I go to work, and this and that. I said, is this my life? So it was like repetition, but there was no meaning. There was no meaning. So, you know, what you are is all these things that you have written and all these things that you say are so deep and so resonating with people who are looking for themselves, actually. So why they are here. So that is why I think this is so amazing the way you put it. So that is why I would like to go into this issue, because, you know, I spend a lot of time with a lot of scientists from all the fields and from also from artificial intelligence community. And I've asked them, you know, you call it artificial intelligence. You know, for a computer, there is data. So when it's digested, it is information. But where is the wisdom? So can you have artificial wisdom? So can we have artificial wisdom?
You want the answer right away? Yes. No. No, you cannot have wisdom. Computers don't have wisdom because computers are not conscious. And computers are classical machines. They use bits. And consciousness, as a minimum, has to be quantum, as a minimum. In fact, there is a paper which is now in preprint, which will be published in the book that is supposed to come out in a month or so, that I wrote with a famous professor.
Dariano?
Dariano, that's right. Yeah.
You said about, yes.
Yeah. And so with that, you know, in that we have I believe, the first theory of consciousness and free will that exists. And, you know, and so, you know, that can explain, for example, one of the problems with schism, which is the combination problem, which I'm sure you've heard about. So that is solved very well. And so it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a theory, of a physical theory of consciousness. Of course, the consciousness itself goes beyond physics in the sense that physics stops at information. But the meaning of information is not within physics. The meaning of information is within a theory of consciousness that can only stop at the meaning, at the symbols, you know, at the information. Okay, so today the most advanced physicists know that matter derives from information. In other words, information is even more fundamental than matter. What we thought matter was, you know, was the particles. Particles are not, don't even exist as we imagine them. They are really patterns of information that have a meaning, which is, you know, in a context that is not known, because the context of the meaning has to be within conscious entities. because only conscious entities can give meaning to symbols. And so you see, we have a reality which is in a sense beyond quantification, which is the reality of meaning, that is our reality, which can only be lived. And then we have a reality which is the physical reality that can be measured and that is based on information, and it can be measured. But in this model that I'm developing, then conscious beings are special systems, but even system is the wrong word, because immediately you think about something, it's a physical system.
Mechanical.
Right. But there are entities that exist in the quantum reality, which today can be described with states in Hilbert space. Hilbert space is a space, is an abstract space with complex dimensions, many dimensions, huge number of dimensions, as a matter of fact, because the more qubits, quantum bits there are that are entangled, the more the space, the larger the space is, the space of possibilities. And so a conscious entity then is an entity that lives there, doesn't even live in this physical, in this space-time. It manifests in this space-time. And the space-time is a sort of is a special way of conceiving space from the viewpoint of a structure that lives in space-time, which is our body. So you see, so now you have the body, which is a quantum classical structure that is controlled by a quantum entity that is conscious and controls the body as we control an avatar in a virtual reality system made in a computer. Except here the body is quantum classical, where the avatar is classical, is made of bits. Our body is made of a mixture of qubits and bits. So it lives in a sort of a straddling the quantum and the classical worlds. And then the body can then interface with a computer. A computer is purely classical, can only exist in a reality in which a bit maintains its identity as bit and can be recognized as bit. But the bit is simply a theory, is simply an agreement. So it is an agreement that if you change the temperature, that agreement is lost because the computer cannot work anymore, because at that temperature, the distinction between 0 and 1 are lost. So you see, this similarly for us, by the way, because our body is also a system, a physical system, but is a physical system that straddles quantum and classical, and the quantum information processing of our body is absolutely unknown today. We just do not know. And I am sure that there is an unbelievable amount of information processing that our body does, which is quantum. And then a lot of it that is classical. So we have a long ways to go to understand biology. We think we do, but we have studied biology, classical system up until today. But if you look at a cell and you see that every molecule, a large protein handles a molecule at a time or an atom at a time, you know that there is quantum physics there at work. It cannot be done classically. So we just don't know. And the most thing that we do not know is how a cell can behave with specificity as an entity that can move as an entity, can have a sort of a unity of behavior that has to come from some kind of processing that is of global origin, not the local stuff that, where a protein does this and this happened and this happened, which is sort of the mechanical way of looking at things. So life is a machine as a physical structure, a machine that is of unbelievably more complex order than the computers that we build, no matter what the people that build computers, and I know them all, are telling us. 20 billion transistors make you laugh. A cell is much more sophisticated than 20 billion transistor, which is the the largest the more complex microprocessor that we can build today. It's just a completely different order of magnitude of complexity that we're dealing here, because we're dealing with quantum classical systems. So having said that, then the consciousness living in the pure quantum reality, if you want to say what is the body of consciousness, well, the body of consciousness must be made of qubits, of quantum bits. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so now this conscious entity has to be at least a quantum computer, which is exponentially more capable of information processing than a quantum classical computer, which is our body, or a classical computer, which is the computers that we buy in the shop, or Amazon. So you see, so we now have a hierarchy where which is made of 3 levels in this case, where the consciousness, my consciousness, communicates with my body. A small portion of my consciousness is what I recognize as my ego, the consciousness that I think I am when I believe that I am the body. Well, that's the ego. But all the insights that I have, all the extraordinary experience of consciousness that I have, they come directly from a vaster entity, which is me, the real me that I know when I die, when my body dies. I will not die, but when the body dies, I wake up to this much vaster reality, recognizing that before I was just paying attention to what my body was doing. And of course, that's exactly what happens when people describe their near-death experiences. They basically realize that, wow, they live in a completely different world. They can have the point of view, which is not the point of view of the body. So consciousness itself can actually know information directly and experience that information directly, which is something that computers don't even come close. I mean, computers simply signals moving, at the speed of light, versus something that right now we cannot say much more than what I'm just saying. Something extraordinary that we will have to explore with our consciousness, because no instrument can explore that part, because it goes beyond the instrument, which is made of the stuff that our body is made.
This is so amazing. So amazing. Mr. Faggin, they asked me to write not only from the perspective of neuroscience, but also from the perspective of, again, Sufism, because there's so much unknown to the understanding of consciousness and free will and space-time, what all these are, and reality. And I wrote this overview to these professors who asked for it. And the way we perceive it is the spirit, the soul, and the body, when they come together, they make a hybrid. So this hybrid actually is like what the Rumi, for example, as a Sufi master, he says, the bird in the cage. So this limitless understanding, this limitless consciousness is put in this cage-like thing and experiencing the world through that thing and seeing only like a very, small percentage of what is out there, and with a symbol, with over the symbols actually of this thing that we call reality. And so when you were talking about I think the qubits and the bits, I think the way you put it is so amazing, and it is so understandable. And while I was reading your study, and I'm so excited for you to publish it and share it with everyone. So the concepts of, for example, free will is because we have layers of self, what we call layers of self, like cortical self is this like again, if I wear a virtual reality headset and a Tesla suit and they put me on a screen, in front of a screen, I would begin to believe, because of my brain is like fooling me all the time, I would be believing that I was in that screen and I was like eating something, you know, stuff like that. But these are only the levels of what we call the self, because beyond this level of what I call the cortical self, and then the emotional self, more like the animal self, that's kind of computational in that respect. But beyond that, there is a self that is what I call like a divine self that cannot be computed. And it is actually out of space and time, just like you mentioned, it's out of space and time.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, what you are saying is, please read, if you have a chance, I would like to send you a book of Rumi and you will be like, oh my God, just like Krishnamurti and David Bohm, because I have never seen somebody like you who have put this into science in such a great way. And that is why I think the only people who experience this thing over psychedelics or stuff like that, we don't use any kind of drugs, because we only retreat ourselves from any kind of stimulating, like the Gansfeld, you know, Gansfeld experiments, because that's how you understand that it's an illusionary kind of world that you are seeing through this filter, what we call the interface, just like human. Oh my God. So we see consciousness like electricity, but when it's in a refrigerator, because of the box, it gives cold air. But because of the box, in an oven, it gives warm air. It's the same electricity, it's the same consciousness, but it's because of the interfaces, the experience changes. And then it is like this amazing, rich kind of experience land or realm that one can only understand by experiencing certain stuff. Otherwise, most people do not look at it the way we look. For example, I came up with this idea about virtual reality headsets that we can cure people. Why? Because when you look at some certain people that I work with, multiple personality disorder, that came to me in an aha moment. Check the multiple personality disorder to find out if you can cure people by, you know, just fooling their brains that you know, because the consciousness that is using the body is affecting the body. It's a mirror of the consciousness. So when you change that consciousness, because in multiple personality disorders, you have two people, they're using the same body, but then they can just, their bodies can react in a different way when the consciousness changes.
Yes.
Yes, so that is why I think it's very important what you are putting in your theory. I'm very, very excited about this. Can you please, because this is, you have put it in an amazing way, can you please give us a few details about bits and qubits? Because I think you put it so great there in scientific terms. Can you explain to us the bits and the qubits difference so we can understand your theory a bit deeper?
Okay. Sure. I mean, so the bits of a computer, right? They are essentially two states, like a coin. They take a coin, it has two faces, and so it is a physical system that can show only two faces, up or down, for example, or heads or tails, like in a coin, true, false, a voltage level or another voltage level. Two ranges of voltage levels would be zero. One range of voltage level is 0, another range of voltage level is 1, and in between there is a no man's land. Okay, so you can now have circuits that recognize 0 and 1. And the value of the binary code, a binary bit, is that all you have to do is to recognize the 0 or the 1. And then you can create very complicated physical structures that can be programmed. You can make computers, you can make communication systems, and on it goes, just using bits. And in fact, the behavior of a bit is mirrored by a quantum bit when you measure it in space and time. So when a quantum bit is which the quantum bit is the closest physical system that shows what a quantum bit is the spin of an electron. So the spin of an electron is the direction of rotation, but the electron is not rotating, by the way, but it behaves like if the electron were rotating, and then you have a direction of rotation which can be anywhere in space. So now that direction of rotation would span the surface of a sphere. So now each point in the surface of a sphere would be a state of that spin, a state of that qubit. So the quantum bit is something that can be described in this manner. That is an infinity of states, because you have an infinity of state, an infinity of points in the surface of a sphere. When you measure that when you measure an electron with a measurement that you make in space-time, you will only find up or down, right or left, forward or back. In other words, only a bit. You can only get a bit out of a quantum bit. So our physical reality is a reduced reality from a quantum reality in which the quantum bits are interacting with each other. The other crucial thing of quantum systems is that quantum bits can, when they interact with each other, they can entangle. We say entangle, and entanglement means that they can develop joint properties. So now a quantum bit that entangles with another, they may have, for example, the sum of their spins is 0, for example, or is 1. And so then they maintain that correlation even if they are moved further away. And when you measure one, instantly, independent of the distance, the other electron will show the correlated value. So if you measure up, the other one will be down. If you measure down, the other one will be up. And this correlation is what is impossible to have with a classical system. You cannot correlate two classical bits. There is only this 0 and 1 is irrespective of this 0 and 1. You cannot have anything in between those two bits. You can use many of them, to represent many states, but each bit is individual, separate from the other bit. Where in the quantum world, the fact that quantum bits can entangle means that they now have properties in common. And when you entangle many of them, you have huge number of, the combinatorics of the situation are so huge that now you can have, an infinity of states, because each qubit is an infinity of states. But when you have the same system measured in this physical world, in this space-time, you will find at most 1 bit per qubit. That's the best that you can do. You can get 1 bit per qubit, where in the much vaster quantum reality, you have the number of states is just, as I said, an infinity of infinities, which is mind-blowing, right? So that's what, and the other thing which is very crucial is that you cannot make any measurement without disturbing the system. And so that ensures that there is privacy of the experience that would correspond to these qubits that are entangled. So a set of qubits that are entangled could correspond to an experience of an entity, but that experience of an entity is not accessible to people that look from the outside. Because if you look from the outside, you would disturb, when you make a measurement, you would disturb that state, and you would not possibly, you could not possibly know it. So which explains why our experience is private. My experience you cannot know my experience by any observation of the signals that I have in my body. That experience is private.
Private.
Inviolate. And yours likewise. You can only understand me if I tell you what I'm feeling by converting my experience into symbols. And then you convert the symbols into your own experience, and then you can get an idea of what I'm feeling. But other than that, there is a privacy of my experience. So, for example, in a computer, you can copy the bits. In a quantum systems, you cannot copy the state of the system into another system. There is a theorem, it's called the no cloning theorem, that says that you cannot copy the state of a quantum system. It is unique to that system and unknowable because you cannot copy it. So if a classical computer was conscious, then you can make copies of the program, and then you would have many conscious computers with the same consciousness, with the same individuality of the original computer, which, in other words, you cannot protect the privacy. That's another big reason why consciousness has to be quantum, because we know that our experience is inviolate. When you make measurements, you can only get signals, you can only get pointers to a possible experience, but it's all that you can know. You cannot know the actual experience.
I can never know what you have experienced.
Yeah.
And even I can say, as from the perspective of neuroscience, what I experience, as I remember it, sometimes changes. The way I remember it, the way I think of it, the way somebody makes a critics on it, it changes. So
absolutely. Every time you actually access a memory,
yes,
you change the memory.
Yeah.
You as a neuroscientist, you know that. In other words, we basically, in some ways, we change our past.
Yes.
The more time we revisit our past, the more we rewrite the story of our past.
Definitely. And that is why it's so interesting, because, from the perspective of neuroscience and also being a lawyer, I mean, all these things at the same time, and with a musician, a lawyer, and an author, and a neuroscientist, and physics researcher, and everything. When somebody talks, when two people talk about the same thing, and they're talking totally different stuff, and they're saying totally different stuff about the same thing, it's so amazing. And that is why I always tell my team, I never trust witnesses, because
Yeah, absolutely. But even in simple things like the color of the car that hit the other car, I mean, you have 5 witnesses, and not all agree that the car was red, for example.
This is so amazing. This filter that I personally understand as a DNA, and this filter that consciousness experiences itself through itself, by itself, and seeing the same thing but in different ways. I think it's so rich and so amazing to think of, and certainly cannot be reduced to this little percentage of what we call reality. Is just that, like, the symbol thing. But again, it's also not very easy to talk to people who think that consciousness is generated by the brain, and that is really very interesting, because maybe this perspective, because I have experienced things, and because I've been working on this, and to being a dream scientist, because we believe that we are living in a dream, and all our goal is to go to the state of lucid dreaming, to wake up before we die, because what we are taught is die before you die. Dying from the limits of the senses that give you this kind of symbol representative reality, so that you can go through beyond what you call this thing called reality, these things, these symbols. So that is why it's easier for us to understand. and people who also experience, like, as we know, for health reasons too, psychedelics and stuff, they report the same things. But when we are dreaming in a dream state, we are creating our own space-time already. And we are, we have a team of scientists who we talk about space-time, what is time, what is space, and about all these scientists who lived in the past, and we talk about it all the time. Even time is totally personal, how you experience time and space, and everything is totally personal. So we are talking about this, there are lots of still deterministic views that you also mention, also in your books and in your talks, that, when you give the initial conditions, that you can find out what the result is going to be. But we are not the same person in 6 months. We are changing.
No, we're not the same person in 1 nanosecond later.
Yes, we are not. So
we are never the same. Parmenides was correct.
Definitely. And a Spanish and Arabic Sufi master, Ibn Arabi, he says that when, as a neuroscience researcher and worker, for example, when you look at the interface as in the animals, for example, a starling experiences reality in just like a blinking reality, not like a continuous reality, because of the fastness of its metabolism. So when we look at a light or a star that is like flickering, but after a certain speed, what our brain gives is a constant reality, a constant light that is not turning off at all. But that is not true at all. We are all like in this stable and continuous reality state. But in dreams, I think dreams are very important to understand in that respect. You begin to understand that you were talking about, lucid dreaming and vivid dreams, and that is our goal to step into the area of lucid dreaming in life, actually. So this is something that I was really struck when you were writing about it, and you were talking about it in your also talks. I would like to ask you this. You are giving this great example of this bicycle and this person that is on the bicycle and who is also walking by this bicycle, and how a computer, which doesn't know that it shouldn't, self-driving car, it shouldn't hit that bicycle because the person is walking right next to it. Could you please explain to us? Because I think that's very understandable to anyone who doesn't understand about, computer science or anything, or maybe fabric of the reality and AI. Could you explain to us that amazing?
Yes. Well, let me repeat the example, because otherwise people that haven't listened to my talk or
the books
or read my book, they cannot understand what I'm talking about. But basically, a few years ago, when they opened up a couple of cities to make live tests about self-driving cars, quickly there were a couple of dead people that tested the system. And one of these situation was a person that was, instead of being mounting a bike and biking as the examples that were given to the computer were all of that type. The person was simply walking next to his bike, walking with the bike, but next to his bike, and the car didn't understand anything and just went and ran over and killed this guy. So this is an example of what I call comprehension or lack of comprehension. Our consciousness is geared to comprehend its reality, to understand what's going on. And so much of what it does is nothing to do with figuring out the pattern or what have you, but it is tuned to understanding the surrounding in the best way possible and in the fastest way possible. A computer has to learn painfully by being given a lot of examples of situations in which he has to correlate the situation to an action. And if you don't have examples of extraordinary situations, or what for us would be normal situation, but for the computer would be extraordinary situation, the computer will simply not know what to do. And that's a major problem. And when eventually we will have many self-driving cars being tested, they will test the corners, the corner cases, so to speak. In other words, the things that they never seen, and there will be many problems. And so that's why I believe that the self-driving cars will happen much later than people are promising us, because there are many of these special cases, especially in in cities that are chaotic, where there is traffic is not, people don't follow the rules, and people cross the street without any, without looking around. And so cars will have to learn to recognize situations that they've never seen, and not having comprehension, they will create problems. And so this is the fundamental difference again between artificial intelligence, which is basically correlations, action reactions based on examples, and the comprehension that we have, where a child, a 2-year-old will know that, that a man next to a bike or a man mounted on a bike is the same situation, essentially. there is no difference.
Yes. When I'm with artificial intelligence, scientists, I asked them if, because they trust this, they kind of like worship this artificial intelligence. They say like the judges will be, robots, and they will decide better, they will be more fair, more just, and this and that. And one of them, I even asked, because of the ethics problem of artificial intelligence, and which is a very big problem, I think. Of course. Is a very big problem, because who is programming the artificial intelligence is a human. So we have to trust the ethical understanding of those people. And we believe that we have an animal within ourselves. So as Sufis, not from the perspective of neuroscience. Of course, we can also see that from the perspective, but so unless you train that animal within yourself, you can never be sure of yourself that you're going to make the just, and the equal decision. So how can I, and I asked them, I said, why are you afraid of artificial intelligence? I said, it's not being afraid, but I said, I believe that we are giving the power to these machines. We are giving our consciousnesses to these machines. And because I don't trust ourselves, unless we train ourselves, that is why I don't trust the machines. Because just like you mentioned, it's an extension of our mind. They are an extension of our mind. They are mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely. But they are only an extension of a little piece of our mind. Yes. Because our mind is not only the rational mind, the intellect as engineers or scientists believe reality to be, but also the intuitive part of our mind, which is not algorithmic. That is the part of our mind that connects us to our higher being, to who we are. And that's our we have flashes of insights that are the way that we understand, if we are open to those, a communication to our vaster self, to our little self, which is the ego being.
Yes.
But then we have emotions, and scientists never talk about emotions as if they didn't exist. And most of our actions are based on emotions, on desires that we might not even be aware, because we don't want to be aware, because we keep our consciousness from being aware, because otherwise you shouldn't do what you now want to do. So you see, and then of course we have the spiritual dimension, which goes beyond the physical, the mental, and the emotional. So reducing man to only the mechanical part of his brain,
yes,
is absolutely a dangerous thing to do, that we should never do. And you know, in other words, we cannot abdicate our judgment, our common sense, our wisdom, our ability to make decisions based on, you know, for example, or a collective, a group of people that can argue about a situation. Now, there are situations in life where you don't have the luxury to argue because you have to make a decision, otherwise you're dead. But
yes.
but the point is that, you know, we cannot abdicate. And the danger of this kind of thinking, the AI community typically, is that eventually those machines are going to be controlled by people of ill will. They will control us through those machines, because those machines cannot control by themselves. They have no judgment whatsoever. So they behind the back, they are controlled by the people. They want to control us, and they can control us if they can convince us that we are machines that are worse than the machines that they have built. And that is even worse danger. That is basically abdicating to the powerful that will use the machine to control us. That is a no-no in front of us.
You know, when they're thinking that artificial intelligence will be like more just and this and that, actually, I think it's a runaway from trying to train yourself or treat yourself or train your animal that is within yourself, then, you know, trying to run away from that and trying to build something that you can submit to. Actually, you know, that's very interesting because that's again to me an escape from trying to fight the evil side that you have within yourself, the animal side within yourself, that is depriving you from reaching your divine self. And I think that's a runaway, because the reason you don't want to train yourself but to just submit to a machine that you are creating is, I think, another like a feeling like a godlike thing. I mean, you are actually creating.
It's an idol. It's an idol.
Yes. Yes.
Like building a statue, you know, and then adoring a statue. You know, it's the same mindset. So, you know, we are here to know ourselves, and knowing is not rational. Irrational is the smallest part of our knowing. The knowing that we are here to find out is the emotional knowing. What do we want? Why do we want to hurt someone? Why do we want to, you know, to love someone? Why do we have love? Well, you know, those are the things that we want to understand about ourselves. You know, we're not here to figure out equations, for Christ's sake. I mean, those are part of, you know, a process to make machines to help us, but not a process of making ourselves know. We want to machines in order to free ourselves from the stuff that keeps us from knowing ourselves, so that they can do the stupid work, you know, the mechanical work that we have to do, that can, can really reduce us to a machine. You know, if you work in a factory, you know, doing the same thing over and over every day, that's not a job for a human being. But before we replace those human beings with machines, we better train that person to be a human being. Otherwise, we are going even worse. We are dispossessing a job of a person because we can sell machines instead of selling people. And that is a major problem today. A worse, you know, we're not thinking straight about how to use AI and robotics in ways that help us be more human, help us be more part of a reality of discovery and of growth for the good of everybody. So, you know, the mindset is really very deleterious, and we have to really understand. Otherwise, Otherwise, we're going to go down the wrong road as humanity.
Yes, you know, according to again to Sufism, you have levels of consciousness, and not everyone who looks like human is human according to the level of consciousness he's practicing, actually. So yes, so that is why I think we are mostly using our like animal-like computational machinery kind of consciousness. That is why I think it's easier for us to believe that we are machines and there's no purpose of life and we are here and we're going to die and this and that. And it's so interesting that although we are immortal, we are looking for immortality. That's another ironic thing, you know.
Yeah, but we are looking at immortality from the outside by downloading our consciousness into a computer, which is, absolutely impossible, as we have been discussing, right? I mean, then we are basically, then we can make many copies of ourselves. Which shouldn't be possible because we are in violate, our consciousness is in violate, and we know that within ourselves. See, the problem is that there is a lot of fear about our emotions, and most people walk away from our emotions. Then they are controlled behind their back by their emotions. That's how people do silly things in their lives, because desires which are not acknowledged are basically yielded, and then the reason is used to justify, a stupid decision. There was actually, came through the emotional side that was not acknowledged. And so it's very important to develop the emotional self. The emotional self is a much richer, mirror of our state of development as human beings, much more than the intellect. And the fact that science typically badmouths emotions, doesn't want to deal with emotions, they don't want to deal with intuition because that's wrong. And so this moving only into the rationality, the rational aspect is not good. It's deleterious. We need to have both. We need to have both the emotions and the spiritual aspect of life, the intuitive aspect of life, and the rational aspect of life. So, because otherwise you go the other extreme, which is the extreme of people that believe basically dogmas. And if you believe, you go the wrong way. Religions have shown that over the history. You have to use your reason as well. So both needs to be done. Both needs to be joining together into a new course for humanity in which science and spirituality become one. And we understand that the living is not just, just having information, going through a processor, for Christ's sake. I mean, living means becoming. Real living, you become what you experience. I mean, the direct experience of something is like what I explained in my experience earlier. I become the world that I observe. I am the world that I observe. That's the capacity of consciousness, which is not, is not algorithmic. Is beyond algorithm by leaps and bounds. There is no way that an algorithm can give you an experience in which you become what you experience.
There is this example that, Sufi master Ibn Arabi gives this example. He says the fish was in the sea, but he didn't know, he didn't understand that he was in the sea. So he wanted to know the sea. So they took him out of the sea, then he understood that he was in the sea.
Yeah.
And then he says, it is like, we are all like, it's a frequency sea, like that, like this universe. Just like the example of the internet is all around us, but according to our computer, we are experiencing that partial internet because of our interface again. So in the sea, there are cups, and there are cups that are made of like ice. So they believe that it is holding the sea within itself, but it believes that it is something else from the sea. So when this ice melts and the drops reach the sea, then the drop understand that he is the sea in a drop. And so this is actually exactly how you are putting that. This interface, when we get rid of this interface, while we are here, before we die, if we die before we die, we already step into the other realm, what you call the quantum realm, quantum world. And these people who have experienced it like this, including yourself, are putting it in such a way that, of course, it is so amazing. Once you experience it, you begin to understand that you are not dying. You're just changing the suit, this Tesla suit, and you call the avatar. Yeah. And just like the Sufis say, you know, it is we are here to observe ourselves. We are here to know ourselves and also upgrade ourselves.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Yes.
Knowing is you know, the meaning of us is infinite. And so we can never reach the meaning of us, which is, you know, and each of us is a point of view of one. You know, so the point of view of one, we see the totality of what exists through a unique point of view. And, you know, through that unique point of view, we have a completely different experience of another point of view, of another point of view, of another point of view. And so all of a sudden, one can know it through the many point of views that he created in order to know himself.
It's so amazing. And these two words I would like to share because of the because I think I'm almost, I don't want to take too much time of you. It's such a pleasure, such an honor, such a chance that you have given us. You know, the word consciousness, when you break it into two, it means means together with, and shis is actually the root word for science.
Yeah.
So the word science comes from this word shis, and this word shis comes from ancient Arabic, which means the tree of life. Mm. So you get to know yourself by yourself. You need another one of you so that you understand. While you're walking, for example, and you said something wrong to somebody's talking within you saying, Denise, why did you do this? You're so silly. You shouldn't have done this. You know, this higher self that you mentioned is talking to you all the time and guiding you to what you should become. It's helping you all the time. But you believe, just like it is like your holographic version is right now. You are in California. Where are you right now? In
Los Altos Hills, near Palo Alto, near Stanford University. Yes.
Oh, you're near Stanford University. You were there, but I'm seeing you right now on my screen. So this one
right now.
Yeah, this Mr. Faggin in my screen says, "I am Mr. Faggin. This is me." Forgets that he is the Mr. Faggin right now in Stanford. So he thinks he's two. So this is getting to, you know, once you merge, like your holographic version reaches your true self, that's your higher self. Then two becomes one. And then he says, oh my God, I am the world and the world is me. So this is just like that. We think you can be on the TV right now in millions of TVs, but you are only one. So this is like you were experiencing yourself.
Because what you see is my classical information.
Yes.
Not only my classical information, but my classical information in 2D.
Yes.
because my classical information is in 3D.
Yes, and this classical information saying, no, this is Mr. Faggin, and the other one is saying, hello, this is me, come back to me, you know. So that is how you become the world, how you become one, and how this drop reaches the sea and it becomes a sea in a drop. So, and also the word cosmos, it is the same root with cosmetics. So it means we are here to get beautified. We are here to beautify ourselves.
Well, we're here to enjoy also our life, right? I mean, you know, it is, in other words, when I say that knowing yourself is the foundation, and I'm not the first to say that, right? But when I say that, with knowing yourself, there is joy, there is an excitement, there is, you know, there is satisfaction, there is, you know, there is fulfillment, love, you know. So, I mean, all those things are there and that's why we live, and that's the meaning is in all those emotions, all those feelings, because as I said, we know because we feel.
Yes.
So you know, how do we know? Because we feel. And what is the meaning? The meaning is in the feeling itself, is inherent in that feeling, in that sense of expansion or joy, or you know, wanting to go in a certain way with your life, with others, and you know, work together with others. Whatever it is the, you know, that is the meaning, which is the essence of the knowing, is the meaning, and the meaning is carried by the qualia, which are the sensations and the feeling.
Yeah. You know, as a scriptwriter, I see this divine scenario in life, and you know, life is something that goes forward, but you understand it when you look at it backwards.
Yes.
Because certain things you meet and you say, what's the meaning of this? Why did I go through this? This is totally meaningless. And then you come to a certain point that everything is like, it's like a chain. It is like guiding you, this higher self of you is guiding you to become the seed, to turn into a sprout, and then a tree, and then give fruits.
Yeah. So that we see the difference by how we behave in this virtual reality, in this simulation of you know, of reality in which our body exists, to see, you know, to actually verify that we have actually learned something, that we know more about ourselves, we know more about our emotions, especially our intentions. The last thing to know about yourself is your true intentions, because your true intentions are the intention of the high self. Yes. That is you. So it is the high self that needs to know itself through you, through my experience. My high self knows itself. You see, so I am in a sense a proxy of my high self here to do this simulation to figure out, you know, what I still need to learn, and when I'm done, when my body dies, you know, it's like waking up from a dream and realizing that I'm in a much vaster reality than the reality that I was before, where I thought that was the reality. Because consciousness has the ability to expand and contract, to become what it experiences, as I was saying before. So if I become my body, I believe that I am my body, and I Yes. don't look outside of the body, and so you know, so there is a potential trap there, and this ability to expand and contract. You know, you could, you know, end up in a rut, so to speak. You know, repeating the same thing over and over again like a machine. Yes. And that's exactly what people do when they believe that they're only a rational mind. They go into a rut. They no longer feel anything, or what they feel is what their ego pictures that it is, and they don't really know their real intention, because they don't observe themselves from the conscious level to their emotions, to their real feelings. And that is the danger that we have if we don't do that in the future. We really are here to do a job that computers cannot do. Computers can help us do the job, but if we put computers in charge, we are actually going back as opposed to going forward in a
You know, as we begin to close this wonderful interview, I mean, it's because of your time. We can listen to you like for days, not hours. You know, the Sufi master, again, Ibn Arabi, Spanish and Arabic Sufi master, he says that we are not of this world. We are only passing from this world. This world is a bridge. So do not make constructions on this bridge, because you don't make constructions on this bridge. Yeah. It is funny, he says, and you know, yeah. and I think the biggest issue with humanities right now, what we are going through these days and for the past 1.5 years, is that we have lost purpose of life, because we believe that we are not worth it to be able to think like we are machines, or we are in the simulation of this parallel world, you know, boy who is playing on in his computer, and he has created the simulation, whatever. To be able to think like that, I think is because of losing self-worth. And the purpose of life actually is for us to give a chance to know who we are, because this life is a school for us to learn who we are and to upgrade ourselves and to witness ourselves and to be immortal, to go beyond this reality, to in all these realities or realms that we don't know of. So how would you want to wind up to all that you have given us, all this wonderful information and wisdom and knowledge and wisdom, to all our viewers about how they should think about purpose of life, and how they should pull themselves together when they fall down and think that they're worthless, and what would you suggest them to do? And
well, for me, the crucial idea of crucial worldview is that we are not machines. In other words, we are conscious entities that live in a vaster reality than space-time and matter, the way we imagine it to be the total reality that we have. Which means that when we die, we wake up to our reality. You know, it isn't that we go from the body to a new reality, because we never left the body. We are already there. We are controlling our body from there. Yes. We think that we are in the body for a while. Like when you are dreaming, you think that you are whatever character you're playing in the dream, but you're not. You are asleep. In that case, you are asleep, and your mind is giving you a dream. And so when you wake up, you find yourself back to where you were, which was your bedroom. And here is a much bigger bedroom where we exist, and this vast world that we think is real is really like a dream. And when we finally have finished our job here, we find out that we are this vaster being that perhaps we had a chance once or twice in one lifetime to get a peek at by having extraordinary experience of consciousness. So then if you accept this, and if you accept this and you are open to experience this, then you will have those experiences, but you have to be open to experience that. If you are closed, meaning that if you think that you are a body and that's all you are, and then when you die, that's game over, like we are told, and you believe that, you will never try to know more. And so you will waste your life, or you will not waste your life, but you will not get as much out of your life as you could have had if you had been open and you had asked to know more about who you are, and having, desiring more satisfaction out of your life instead of being happy with whatever you get, trying harder, being a little crazy if you want, but not basically following the rules too much, the rules of the world, but exploring who you are. So we are here to learn who we are, and that means that you and only you can do that. I cannot do it for you, and you cannot do it for me. Each one of us has to think with his own head, has to feel with his own feeling body, has to think with his own, has to have the courage of his own actions. And so these three centers, the head, the heart, and the belly, needs to be harmonized in order to reach a level of maturity in which our spiritual self and the physical self and the rational mind are one. And we can do that on Earth if we play the game with all the cards that we have.
As a musician, I always say, when we are talking with Eben Alexander, he said we are, as Sufis too, we work on, for the brain waves, we work on sound, and we work on breath work, and also fasting and retreat and everything. And he said he's working on sound, and he's such a wonderful person. And then I said, do you know what, have you ever thought about the word universe? It's a musician, it's universe, it's one song, you know. So in this one song, all these frequencies, all in harmony. When you look at it from the roof of this building, you see the city with everything, in everything in place. But if you look at it from the first floor, you say, oh, this is missing, oh, this is too much, this is that. And from the third floor, you see it, oh, it's not that bad. But from the roof, you see the whole picture. And it is so beautiful that everything is the way it should be. But again, to reach that level, you have to also reach your subconsciousness while you are here, because we are taking so much information to our subconsciousness while we are even talking right now. But we are only aware of a very little information that is going on to our prefrontal cortex that we cannot even handle more than 5 to 6 tasks. So our subconsciousness is like our quantum world, and our prefrontal cortex is like our simulated world. So we are looking at this vast knowledge, vast sea of knowledge from this little window that we see, and as long as we don't get rid of it, we will never reach the truth that is beyond what we call reality. I would like to say that this is like one of my dreams coming true. In ancient Arabic, the word for apocalypse means qiyamah, which means to wake up and stand up. So the real waking up is not out there; it is within yourself.
Of course. And most people think that within is in the organs of the body, but the inner reality has nothing to do with the organs of the body. The inner reality is a space that inside of which there is the space-time of our body experience, but that space contains an infinity of possibilities that we can reach if we wish, by changing our viewpoint from the viewpoint of the body to the viewpoint of who we really are, which is a vaster being in a space which we call inner, because we have no better word, but it is everywhere, contains the world. The world is made by us, and it is made by us in order to have an experience in that world, to grow up. And then, as we grow up, we will not need this world anymore, because we never were of this world.
In dream science, within these walls of your brain, while you are sleeping, you have Mr. Faggin in your dream, you have even Eben Alexander in your dream, you have Edward Kelly in your dream, but you are single-minded. There's nobody there. It is all you and your representations and your reflections. So it's every night we go to this organic psychosis kind of thing that is actually making us think that we are not all about this, that we see everything can be possible within this brain, which we know what that is the reality beyond the reality. So this is like a dream time for me in this world, in this experience that I met you, Mr. Faggin. You are an extraordinary mind and wisdom, and you don't need to hear this from me, because I'm sure you have heard it a lot of times. But it's such a huge honor for me to have met you, and I and my team we just fell in love with your ideas and wisdom, and we respect you with the highest way that it could be. And we are hoping that your theory, your papers come out very soon so that we can spread this information, because I think you have the best theory until now that I have ever heard, because I am mostly aware of all of them. And thank you so much for giving us a chance to meet you, and hope to see you, inshallah. I come to the United States too, but I hope that we see you in Turkey too, and we take you to Göbekli Tepe, where we know that we have a history that is actually older than what they taught us. That's another awakening there. We're hoping to see you here, inshallah.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you, and a pleasure to be with your, let me stop for a second, because here you are in Turkey, which is, I don't know, 7,000 miles away, and and we are speaking the same language. What a privilege! What a privilege to be able to have this encounter, which is an encounter of minds that go beyond the limitations of technology. Technology got us to do this, and it's wonderful. But the real value of the exchange that we had is involved in the meaning that we could exchange. And that's really what it's all about.
Thank you so much.